Hello, everyone. This is Cozy Night Frights. Before you go to sleep, please like the video and subscribe and tell me where you watch from and what time are you listening. The gravel road crackled under the tires as Tyler's old Jeep crawled its way deeper into Black Hollow Forest. Branches scraped the sides like bony fingers, and the canopy above thickened, muting the afternoon sun to a dull orange haze. Inside the Jeep, the mood was high. "Next time," said Lena from the back seat, grinning, "we rent a cabin with running water." "Next time we do something boring and lame," said Mark from the passenger seat. "Like normal people," Tyler smirked. "Normal's overrated. We're here for the real deal. Stars, silence, and zero cell signal." "Sounds like the setup to every horror movie," muttered Jess, hugging her arms tighter around herself. That earned a laugh from the group. They were 5 in total. Tyler, the unspoken leader of their college crew, built like a linebacker, but with a smile that could charm bears out of hibernation. Mark, his best friend since freshman year, sarcastic and clever. Lena, smart and fierce, always pushing for one more hike, one more dare. Jess, quieter, sensitive, but grounded. And Aaron, the fifth wheel, newer to the group. Kinda strange, but Tyler vouched for him. The forest swallowed the light quickly. They parked at a dead end near the old ranger trail, unused, overgrown. "From here," said Tyler, slinging his pack over his shoulder, "we hike 2 miles in. No one goes this deep anymore. It's perfect." As they walked, Jess kept looking over her shoulder. Mark noticed. "You okay?" She hesitated. "I just don't like the feeling. It's too quiet." "That's the whole point," Lena said, exasperated. But even Tyler slowed a little. The deeper they went, the more the trees leaned inward. The more the wind whispered in voices that almost made sense. By the time they reached the clearing and pitched the tents, night had fallen. A red moon rose behind the hills, and somewhere, far off in the dark, something howled. Low, hungry, and too close. The campfire crackled bright in the middle of the clearing, casting long shadows on the tree trunks around them. Tyler passed around beers, and the group laughed louder than the forest liked. "I'm telling you," Lena said, poking a stick at the fire, "Black Hollow is totally haunted. People used to disappear here all the time. Like old settler stories, full-on witchcraft stuff." "Awesome," Mark deadpanned. "Love that for us." Jess glanced around the clearing. Her fingers were fidgeting with the zipper on her hoodie. "I thought it was just abandoned. Like shut down for safety reasons or something." Aaron finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "It was closed because something hunted here, something the rangers couldn't catch." The fire popped. Everyone turned to him. "You're joking," Tyler said, laughing. Aaron didn't blink. "No, there were reports. Livestock torn up, campers missing, tracks too big to be wolves. And then, the full moon attacks." Lena rolled her eyes. "Okay, Teen Wolf, take it down a notch." But Jess leaned in. "You really believe that?" Aaron nodded. "I wouldn't have come out here if I didn't want to know if it was real." The fire hissed like it disapproved. Tyler stood. "All right, bedtime for the monster hunters. I'm crashing before I hear another ghost story." They all laughed, nervous laughter. But no one joked when they zipped up their tents that night, and in the distance, the howl came again. Closer, more human this time, and full of pain. It was well after midnight when Jess heard it. Screech. At first, she thought it was the wind tugging at the nylon of her tent. Then she heard it again. Scratch. Screech. Closer. She sat up slowly, heart hammering, trying not to breathe too loudly. The moonlight coming through the thin tent walls was blood red. She leaned toward the zipper. Did she dare? A shadow passed across the tent wall. Tall, looming, too tall. She clamped a hand over her mouth. Footsteps now. Soft. Heavy. Wrong. Something moved. Around the tent, brushing the walls as it walked. Then silence. Then breathing right next to her ear. Raspy. Wet. And then a whisper. "You don't belong here," she screamed. Lights turned on in other tents. Zippers ripped open. Tyler and Mark came rushing over with flashlights, eyes wide. What happened? Jess was out of the tent, shaking. Something was here. Someone. I heard it walk around the tent. It whispered to me. Tyler shined his light around. Nothing but trees. No footprints. No broken branches. No sign of movement. But Jess pointed at her tent. They looked, and there, 4 long claw marks, carved deep into the nylon. Not animal. Not human. By morning, the energy in the camp had changed. The joking stopped. No one made breakfast. Even the birds were silent. They sat in a quiet circle drinking weak instant coffee. Jess hadn't slept. Neither had Aaron. Tyler looked tense, jaw clenched. Mark tried to break the silence. So, Jess has night terrors. That's new. "Shut up, Mark," Lena muttered. Jess stared at the scratch marks on her tent. Aaron stood suddenly. "There's something nearby. I saw it last night, too." "You what?" Tyler asked. "I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure. But after Jess screamed, I looked out. Something moved between the trees. It was huge. They all turned to look at him." "Why would you keep that to yourself?" Lena asked. Aaron met her eyes. "Because I didn't want it to follow my voice." That silenced them again. Eventually, Tyler grabbed his pack. "I'm going for a walk. Clear my head. I'll be back in an hour." "Not alone," Jess said quickly, but he was already disappearing into the woods. An hour passed, then 2. No sign of Tyler. Mark, Aaron, and Lena finally followed his trail, leaving Jess at the camp with a walkie-talkie. They pushed deeper into the trees, and then they saw it, a stone circle, moss-covered, ancient. In its center, bones, scattered, animal, and something else, and nailed to a tree. Tyler's jacket, torn down the middle. The forest pressed in tighter as they stared at the torn jacket. Mark stepped forward, heart in his throat. No. He wouldn't just leave it here. Aaron crouched near the base of the tree, inspecting the scratch marks in the bark. Deep, fresh. He looked up. He was taken. Lena shook her head violently. "By what? This is insane. He probably wandered off. Maybe he got lost." But the way she said it sounded like she didn't believe it. Mark pointed to the bones in the stone circle. "You think this is a picnic spot?" Lena turned away. They didn't notice the red leaves until the wind picked up. Dozens of them, falling from trees that had been green just hours ago. But the trees weren't shedding. The leaves were dripping. Aaron touched one. It came away red. Not sap, not paint. Blood. A scream tore through the forest. Jess, back at camp, the walkie-talkie crackled, forgotten in Mark's pocket. "It's here. Oh God, it's here." Then silence. The friends ran. Branches slashed their skin, but they didn't feel it, because something in the trees behind them was howling, and it wasn't far anymore. The campsite was destroyed. By the time Mark, Lena, and Aaron burst through the trees, the fire pit was scattered, tents shredded like tissue paper. Jess's sleeping bag was torn open and tossed into the woods like a discarded rag. But no Jess. Only her blood, streaked across the clearing like something had dragged her away. "Jess!" Lena shouted, voice cracking. "Shh!" Aaron snapped. "It's still here." They went silent. Somewhere nearby, something moved. Leaves rustled, not like wind, like weight. Mark grabbed the walkie-talkie, voice trembling. "Jess, if you can hear me, Say something. Static. Then, a breath, wet, animal, right into the mic. The walkie dropped from his hand. Aaron scanned the clearing. We need to move. Now. Get somewhere defensible. But Jess, Lena began. We'll find her, Aaron said. But if we die too, she's just next. Mark's eyes scanned the trees, and that's when he saw them. Eyes, yellow, watching from the underbrush. Too high off the ground for any animal, and blinking, not like curiosity, like hunger. They ran. They didn't stop running until the forest thinned and the edge of a rotted cabin appeared like a corpse between the trees. It leaned to one side, roof partially caved in, but it had walls and a door. Good enough. They rushed inside, barricading the door with old furniture. Dust rose in choking clouds. The place smelled like rot and old iron, but it was shelter. Mark collapsed against the wall, trying to catch his breath. We lost it. No, Aaron said, peering through a crack in the boards. It's circling. Lena found a rotting journal on the table, flipped through its pages with shaking hands. What is this place? She asked. Aaron moved beside her. The journal was filled with sketches. Wolves, moons, and people. Half-wolves mid-shift. Jaws snapping, limbs stretched, scrawled in ink. It only kills under the blood moon. Then it vanishes. But the bites make more. Lena whispered, It's a werewolf. Mark didn't laugh this time. No one did. Aaron pulled a rusted hunting rifle off the mantel. Checked it. Still had one round. One shot, he muttered. We have to make it count. Then came the sound of claws on wood. Above them, on the roof. The ceiling groaned. Dust fell from the rafters. Mark backed away from the fireplace as the sound of movement continued above them. Heavy steps, scratching, sniffing. It's hunting, Aaron said in a low voice. It knows we're in here. What the hell does it want? Lena hissed. Aaron looked grim. To finish the hunt. We crossed into its territory. We bled on its soil. It won't stop until we're gone. Mark's voice cracked. Gone like missing or gone like dead. The roof creaked louder. Then, a crash. The thing dropped through the rotted ceiling like a meteor. Huge, furred, eyes glowing like fire, teeth too long, claws like blades. Mark screamed, Aaron fired. Boom! The shot hit the beast in the shoulder. It reeled back, snarling, flesh smoking where the silver bullet struck. Run! Aaron shouted. The others didn't wait. They dove through the shattered windows as the werewolf recovered and roared, not in pain, but in fury. The cabin burned behind them as the beast tore through what was left of the walls. They ran for their lives. They didn't stop running until they reached a stream, a shallow bend twisting through black roots and mossy stones. They collapsed by the bank, panting. Did we lose it? Lena gasped. Aaron checked behind them. Nothing. No eyes, no growl, just silence. Then, a voice from across the stream. Guys? They all turned. Jess stood on the opposite bank. Clothes torn, hair wild, face pale, alive. Jess, Mark said, stunned. How? She stepped forward, unsteady. I don't know. It grabbed me, dragged me into some kind of burrow. But something spooked it. It ran off. Aaron's eyes narrowed. Did it bite you? Jess hesitated. Jess, Lena whispered, stepping closer. Show us. Jess slowly pulled up her shirt sleeve. A bite mark, already scarring over, flesh bruised and gray. Aaron raised the empty rifle. No, Mark said. Stop. She's one of us. Not anymore, Aaron growled. That's how it spreads. That's how it grows the pack. Jess's eyes started to change. Yellow, brighter than the moon, and she smiled. Jess lunged. Aaron barely got the rifle up in time to block her jaws. She snapped and snarled, eyes blazing, fingernails already turning into claws. Mark and Lena screamed. They ran again, back into the woods. Behind them, Jess howled, a full, savage sound, not human anymore. A call, and from somewhere in the forest, the howl was answered, not once, but twice. 3 times. More. The pack was coming. Mark, Lena, and Aaron sprinted down the riverbed, hearts pounding, breath ragged. Lena sobbed, "We're not getting out, are we?" Aaron gritted his teeth. "Not unless we kill the alpha." Mark shouted, "Which one's the alpha?" Aaron didn't look back. The one that bit Jess. The original. The one that started this, and now it was coming, leading its new pack. To finish the hunt. They ran until their legs burned, until Lena collapsed at the edge of a ravine, gasping for air and clutching her side. Aaron helped her up, eyes darting between the trees. "Keep moving. It's not far now." "Where are we going?" Mark panted, voice nearly breaking. "We can't just keep running forever." Aaron looked grim. "We're not. We're going to its den." "You're insane," Lena said. Aaron pointed toward the base of the ravine. "There's a cave down there. That's where Jess said it took her. If the alpha's anywhere, it's there." Mark hesitated. "We go toward it?" Aaron's voice dropped to a whisper. "You want to end this? We have to kill the one that bit her. Kill it before the blood moon ends." They climbed down slowly, slipping on damp roots and moss-slicked stone. The ravine walls loomed high around them, casting the path into near darkness. The cave entrance was barely visible. A black slit in the earth, half covered in vines and bones. They paused outside. Bones littered the ground. Deer, rabbit, something, human. Aaron lit a flare and handed it to Mark. "Keep it steady. They don't like fire." Inside, the tunnel reeked of rot and fur. The walls were scratched raw. Tufts of hair clung to the rocks. Further in, they saw something that made Lena gag. A nest made of hides and cloth and pieces of camping gear, including a torn strip of Jess's jacket. Then they heard it. Breathing. Heavy. Wet. Deep. Aaron signaled for silence. They crept forward, stepping over rib bones and rusted tools. In the center of the den, a massive shadow loomed, the alpha. It was asleep, coiled like a dog, its back rising and falling with slow, shuddering breaths. Its fur glistened in the red light of the flare. One arm was twice the size of a man's, claws like daggers. Aaron pulled a silver blade from his pack. Mark looked at him in horror. "You came prepared?" "I've been prepared," Aaron said. He stepped forward, but the alpha's eyes snapped open, and it smiled. The alpha launched upward with terrifying speed. Aaron barely dodged, diving to the side as the creature slammed into the den wall, with enough force to shake dust from the ceiling. Its glowing yellow eyes locked onto him, lips curled back in a twisted snarl. Mark dropped the flare. The den was bathed in red light as the flare rolled, casting wild shadows against the cave walls. The alpha's fur shimmered like oil in firelight, black, matted, soaked in old blood. Lena grabbed a rusted pickaxe from the wall and swung it as the beast turned toward Mark. Clang! She hit its side. The blade sank in an inch, maybe less. The alpha barely flinched. It backhanded her into the wall. She hit the stone with a sickening crack and dropped, groaning. "Lena!" Mark cried. Aaron ran forward with the silver knife, driving it at the beast's throat. But the alpha was too fast. It caught his arm mid-swing. "Crack!" Aaron screamed as his wrist snapped. The blade dropped to the floor, skittering out of reach. The alpha leaned in close, pressing Aaron to the ground. Its breath was rancid, meat and rot and wet fur. Its jaws opened, and then Mark grabbed the flare. He shoved it straight into the werewolf's face. The creature howled in agony, stumbling backward. Its fur caught fire in small patches, skin blistering and bubbling in the red light. It clawed at its face, ripping chunks of burned flesh away with yelps of rage. Aaron crawled to Lena. "Get up," he whispered hoarsely, cradling his ruined arm. "Please." She opened her eyes, blood leaking from her nose. "I'm not done. Yet," she groaned. Mark yelled, "Now! While it's down!" Aaron reached for the silver blade again. With his good hand, he passed it to Lena. She rose, limping forward. The Alpha turned, and Lena ran. Screaming, she drove the knife into its chest. Once, twice, 3 times. The werewolf wailed, staggering back, the silver boiling its skin. Smoke hissed from its wounds. Its claws flailed wildly, catching Mark across the arm. Blood sprayed, but he stayed standing. Finally, the creature collapsed. Still, burning. Lena dropped the knife, breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood. They stared in silence. And then, from behind them, another howl. Higher, faster, closer. Mark's face went pale. That wasn't the Alpha. The howl echoed through the cave, shaking the walls like a death rattle. Lena stepped back from the Alpha's corpse, her breath hitching in her throat. The firelight flickered, casting the 3 of them in orange, shadows, making their blood-slicked faces look like masks. Mark clutched his bleeding arm, voice barely a whisper. If that thing wasn't the Alpha, Aaron finished the thought. Then it was just the first. Another growl. Closer now. Not one voice. Many. Claws scraped against stone from the entrance tunnel behind them. Aaron looked toward the knife, then to the flame. "We have to block the tunnel." Lena's eyes widened. "How?" "They're coming. Through now," the fire hissed. Then, Jess stepped into the cave. But it wasn't Jess anymore. Her face looked human, but her eyes were the same glowing yellow. Her body twitched with unnatural movements. Too fast, too jerky. Her hands were claws. Her mouth stained red. Behind her, 2 more figures emerged, shadows with fur and teeth. One wore what remained of a hoodie. Another had bare feet, toenails black and split, all turned toward the flare light. Jess smiled, voice low and lilting. "You killed the wrong one." Aaron grabbed the flare, holding it like a cross. "Back! Stay back!" Jess didn't flinch. She stepped into the light and didn't burn. Aaron's eyes widened. "That's not possible." "We're new," Jess said softly. "We don't fear fire anymore. We don't fear silver. He made us better." Mark stepped back. "You're lying." "I'm evolving," she said with a grin. "You're dying." She lunged. Aaron threw the flare at her. She batted it aside. It bounced harmlessly against the stone. She tackled him, claws out, snarling. He barely got his good arm up as she bit down, teeth tearing flesh. Lena screamed and grabbed the silver knife, stabbing again. But Jess twisted, knocking her flat. One of the others charged Mark, who slammed it with a rock, trying to keep it from biting his already wounded arm. Chaos. Howls. Stone splintered. Blood flew. Then, from deeper in the cave, a bell rang, soft, metallic. All the creatures froze, even Jess. She turned her head sharply toward the sound and whispered, "He's awake." The bell's sound echoed strangely through the stone, thin and metallic, like it came from underneath the world. Every creature in the cave stilled. Jess, the 2 others, even the one Mark had beaten bloody. Their snarls faded to shallow breaths. Eyes went vacant. Heads tilted like dogs hearing an old command. Lena, bleeding from a cut on her cheek, crawled back toward Aaron. What was that?" Aaron's voice was weak. "I don't know, but it controls them." Mark gritted his teeth. "Jess said he made them better. Maybe the Alpha we killed wasn't the first one, just the most recent." Jess turned toward them slowly. Her eyes were different now. Duller. Possessed. She stepped back toward the shadows, pulling the others with her. No more growling. No more attacks. just silent obedience. She looked back only once and whispered, not in her own voice, "He was here before men. He wore skin before we ever knew fire. The blood moon just wakes him." Then she vanished into the dark. They were gone, retreating as if called home. The bell rang again, a second tone, deeper this time. Aaron winced. "We have to leave. That sound, it's summoning him." Lena looked around. "There's another tunnel." Indeed, at the far side of the cavern, behind the nest, half covered by stone, a dark hole descended even deeper into the earth. Cold. Air rushed from it like breath. "Or it's where he sleeps," Mark muttered. Lena stared into the black. "Then maybe we kill the real Alpha." Aaron tried to stand and fell to one knee. "I can't go any farther." "You're not staying here alone," Lena said. "You're not going without me," Mark added, wiping blood from his face. They all looked at one another. 3 of them left. Barely, each broken in some way, and the thing calling them from below? Still untouched, still waiting. Lena took a flare from Aaron's pack, lit it, and stepped toward the hole. "Let's end this." They descended, and the bell tolled a 3rd time. The tunnel spiraled down like a throat carved through the earth. Slick stone walls, claw-marked ceilings, air cold enough to turn breath into smoke. The flare in Lena's hand cast just enough light to show the tunnel continued far deeper than they expected. Mark followed close behind, helping Aaron, who limped and muttered under his breath, "This is suicide." "No," Lena whispered. "It's the only way this ends." The bell tolled again. Closer now. The sound was thicker, less like metal, more like bone. As they rounded the final bend, the tunnel opened into a chamber the size of a cathedral. Natural, stone pillars rose like ribs from the floor to the ceiling. At the far end sat a massive altar, blackened with soot and covered in glyphs. Blood-dark stains spread in every direction, and lying across the altar, a figure. Lena raised the flare. It was not a werewolf. It was something older, hairless, gaunt, skin gray like ash. Its chest barely moved, breathing slow, almost imperceptible. Its limbs were too long, fingers ending in claws that scraped the stone beneath them. Its face was angular and sunken, jaw hanging half open, revealing too many teeth. A crown of antlers sprouted from its skull, twisted, bone white, ancient. Aaron stumbled back. "Is it dead?" As if in answer, the creature opened its eyes, and every torch in the chamber lit at once. Flames burst along the walls, illuminating carvings, hunts, rituals, sacrifices, and wolves, always the wolves, being led by this thing, worshipped, fed. The creature sat up, slowly, like gravity obeyed it. It didn't snarl. It smiled, a dry, rattling voice filled the air. "You brought the flare, the silver, the knife, all the old ways." It stepped down from the altar, tall as a bear, thin as a corpse. "But I am the first, the king of the hollow, before werewolf, before man." Mark raised the silver blade with a shaking hand. The creature looked amused. "You brought tools for children. I am not a beast." Lena's voice cracked. "Then what are you?" The creature's grin widened. "I am the god they forgot." The Hollow King took another step forward. Its footfalls made no sound, but the torches dimmed with every movement as if the fire itself was afraid. Lena held the flare tighter, the flickering light reflected in her wide eyes. Aaron whispered hoarsely, "This thing isn't a werewolf." "No," the creature said, as if answering. "The werewolves were my children. Your myths are watered-down echoes. I wore the form of man before you carved language into stone." Mark raised the silver blade. "You bled once. You'll bleed again." The Hollow King's laugh was like dry leaves scraping across a grave. Try. Mark lunged, blade swinging. But it never connected. The king vanished and suddenly reappeared behind him. With a flick of its wrist, it sent Mark crashing into the stone wall. He hit hard, the blade clattering from his hand and skidding across the floor. Lena screamed, running to him. The creature turned toward Aaron, who was braced against the wall, blood soaking his shirt. "You came the farthest," it said. "You knew of me." Aaron spat blood. "And I came to end you." "Fools," the king rasped. "I am not what dies. I am what remains." The torches all blew out at once. Only the flare in Lena's hand still burned. She dropped beside Mark, shaking him. "Mark, get up, please," he groaned. I'm okay." Aaron stepped forward, cradling his broken arm. "You want blood?" he asked the creature. He pulled a knife from his coat, not silver, but old, ancient, the hilt wrapped in leather, stained dark. He sliced his palm. Blood spilled across the stone. The Hollow King paused, then smiled wider. "Old blood. Ranger blood, you carry his line." Aaron didn't blink. "My grandfather was the last one who came down here. He trapped you, buried you, but he didn't finish it." He stepped into the blood pool, holding the blade out. "Now I will." The Hollow King lunged. Aaron didn't move. He waited, and at the last moment, Lena threw the flare. It hit the king's chest and exploded, flame spilling across the creature's body like napalm. It screamed, a high, inhuman shriek that split the stone. Its flesh bubbled, skin cracking, bone steaming. Aaron roared and drove the blade upward, straight into its blackened chest. The creature howled once more and collapsed. The chamber was silent. Only the sound of breathing, ragged, painful, echoed against the stone. Smoke curled from the Hollow King's body, which now lay sprawled across the altar steps. The creature's antlers cracked like dry branches, crumbling to dust with each passing second. Aaron fell to his knees beside the corpse, the blood still, dripping from his hand, mingling with the dark ichor that spilled from the wound. Mark groaned as Lena helped him sit up. "Is it dead?" he asked, voice shaking. Aaron didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "It's not getting up." The flare had burned out, but some torches remained lit, though dimmer now, flickering like they were running out of breath. Lena looked down at the blackened remains of the creature, a mix of awe and horror on her face. "What the hell was it, really?" she whispered. Aaron wiped blood from his face with his sleeve. "Something older than the stories. Maybe it created them. I think it was the curse." Mark stared at the wound in his arm. "And Jess?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "She's not coming back." A gust of wind blew through the chamber, but there were no openings. No drafts. The firelight flickered. Mark slowly stood despite the pain. "We have to get out of here. This place, it's wrong, even now." Lena nodded, helping him walk. "If we leave the cave, maybe the others will stop. The ones it made," Aaron shook his head. "Maybe. Or maybe we've just broken the dam." Lena looked at him, fear in her voice. "What do you mean?" Aaron rose slowly. "This thing wasn't just a monster. It was a gate, a lock, and we just turned the key." The king's corpse shuddered once, only slightly, but they all saw it. Aaron backed away. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible," Lena screamed, grabbing Mark's arm. "We have to go. Now!" As they turned toward the tunnel, the king spoke, voice like stone breaking. "I was not your curse. I was your keeper." And then its chest cracked open, and something inside began to climb out. The rib cage split with a wet, splintering crack. From within the Hollow King's broken chest cavity, something began to writhe. A shape not bound by muscle or bone, but by shadow. It slithered through the shattered sternum like smoke with weight, unfurling limbs that weren't quite limbs and eyes that blinked in every direction at once. Lena froze. No, 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 no. What is that? Aaron stared, horrified. It's what he was keeping inside. Mark backed away, shaking his head, stumbling against the uneven stone. You said he was the curse. You said we had to kill him. I was wrong, Aaron breathed. He was the prison. That thing. It's the source. The creature fully. Emerged now. 8 feet tall but constantly shifting, as if made from oil and teeth. Its form was neither beast nor man. Its skin rippled with faces, screaming ones, embedded in its body like memories burned into tar. It looked at them all at once, and it spoke without a mouth. I am the hunger behind the howl. I was buried beneath the king, but now I walk. The cave rumbled. Stones cracked overhead, and from somewhere deeper in the earth another bell began to toll, this one lower, older. Aaron grabbed Lena and Mark and shoved them toward the tunnel. Go! The creature stepped down from the altar, each stride making the ground tremble. Aaron turned to face it, gripping the old-blooded blade. Now, dim and dull, silver edge burned black from the king's death. I'll hold it, he said. Lena's eyes widened. No, no, Aaron, we don't leave you here. You have to, he growled. If it gets out, it'll spread. The forest won't contain it. The moon won't bind it. It's free now. He met her eyes one last time. Tell people the truth. Tell them the stories were merciful lies. Mark pulled Lena, dragging her toward the tunnel. We'll come back. Aaron, we'll come back with... The cave shook violently. The creature was nearly upon them. Aaron turned, faced it, knife raised. As the tunnel collapsed behind them, they heard him roar. Come on then. And then, darkness. The tunnel behind them caved in with a thunderous roar. Lena and Mark were thrown forward by the shockwave, landing hard on the rocky incline. Dust and debris filled the passage, sealing them in choking silence. Aaron! Lena screamed, voice raw. But there was no answer, only the shifting of stone settling into place, and beyond it, distant sounds that made the blood freeze. Shrieks, cracks, a deep, wet tearing. Not Aaron's voice, not human. Mark grabbed her, arm, eyes wide. He bought us time. Don't waste it. They scrambled up the collapsing slope, guided only by faint torchlight and the echo of their frantic breaths. The passage twisted, narrower now, as if the cave itself was trying to choke them out. Every turn was the wrong one. Every sound made them flinch. Eventually, the tunnel opened. They stumbled into a small chamber with collapsed walls and an old stone archway covered in moss and bone charms. A half-rotted wooden sign leaned against the wall, etched in faded red. Hollow boundary. Do not cross. Mark stared at it, laughing bitterly. Yeah, too late. Lena's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, gasping, tears streaking through, the dirt on her face. He's gone. Mark knelt beside her. He knew. He always knew this was how it would end. She stared back at the tunnel. But that thing, it's still down there. We just traded one monster for something worse. A low rumble traveled up from beneath them. Then, the air shifted. Warm, not like breath, like release. The stone beneath the altar, deep under the chamber, cracked, and from the earth came a pulse. A heartbeat. Not human, not single. Multiple. Growing, louder, faster. A new howl rose from below, twisted, piercing, not like the others. Higher pitched, younger. Lena's mouth went dry. Mark, I think it's spreading already. He stood up, jaw clenched. We need to get out, find the jeep, find anyone, before the forest becomes a cradle. They pushed forward, crawling through roots and damp stone, leaving the shrine of the Hollow King behind. And beneath it all, something laughed. The final crawl through the winding cave felt endless, tight, suffocating. a tunnel more suited for wolves than humans. Roots scraped their backs. Muffled sounds followed behind them. Not pursuit, not yet, but movement. Growth. Something waking that had been sleeping far too long. Mark pushed ahead with blood-slicked hands, his breath ragged. "Come on," he whispered. "Almost there." Lena crawled behind him in silence, every muscle aching. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd slammed into the cave wall. Her hands were raw, knees bruised, and her mind burned with the memory of Aaron standing before that thing. It wasn't just bravery, it had been faith. Faith in her and Mark to finish what he started. Light, at last. Up ahead, a jagged break in the rock, narrow but enough. Mark wriggled, through it, dragging himself out onto damp forest floor. Lena followed seconds later, gasping at the cold night air like she'd never breathed before. They stood on a wooded hill above the ravine. The trees looked different now. Older, twisted. The red of the blood moon lit the canopy from above, casting long, warping shadows. Lena looked back at the cave mouth. "We didn't stop it." "No," Mark said, brushing leaves off his face. "But we survived." A long silence passed. Then, movement. In the trees. Both turned fast, eyes scanning the dark. Jess stepped into the moonlight, only it wasn't Jess anymore. She moved too smoothly, too silently. Her eyes weren't yellow now, they were black, smiled. No fangs, no claws. Not yet. "You opened the door," she said sweetly. Mark stepped between her and Lena. "Don't come any closer." Jess tilted her head. "The hollow thanks you." From behind her, others emerged. Men, women, even a child, faces expressionless, clothes torn, silent, watching. Mark raised his fists, but Lena grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. "Look." The group turned, walked away. One by one, back into the forest. Jess looked at Lena one last time. "He doesn't need to hunt now. He has us." She disappeared into the dark, leaving the woods very, very quiet. The silence that followed Jess's disappearance was almost unbearable. No wind, no birds, not even the whisper of trees, just the echo of her voice. "He doesn't need to hunt now. He has us." Mark exhaled slowly. "What does that even mean?" Lena stared into the woods. "It means it's not a creature anymore. It's a belief, a network, a hive. Whatever crawled out of that king, it isn't just flesh," rubbed her arms, shivering despite the warm air. "It's an idea now, a calling." Mark turned toward the direction of the old ranger trail. "We need to go. We have to warn someone. Government, military, hell, the press." Lena nodded, but her eyes lingered on the forest. The shadows seemed deeper than before, more purposeful. It took them hours to find the trail. The jeep was still parked at the dead end where they'd left it days ago, covered in pine needles and dust, looking like a relic from a dream. The sight of it made Mark laugh once, sharp, bitter. I half expected it to be gone. Like the woods decided to eat that too. Lena said nothing as she climbed in, cradling her arm. The engine turned over reluctantly, then roared to life. It was the loudest thing they'd heard in days. They drove in silence. Past the tree line, past the Forgotten Ranger sign, past the marker that simply read, "Closed for public safety." When they hit signal again, Lena's phone blew up with missed alerts. Friends, wondering where they were. Family. One message from Aaron's sister. "Any word from Aaron? He said he was going out of town with you." Lena's hands trembled. She didn't reply. Mark finally broke the silence. "Do we tell the truth?" Lena looked at him, at his bandaged arm, at her bruised face, at the woods, shrinking in the rearview mirror. "No," she said. He nodded. Good, because no one would believe us anyway. But even as the forest disappeared from sight, the sky above remained tinged red, longer than it should have. And far behind them, in the deepest part of Black Hollow, something new began to howl. Not a cry of hunger, not a cry of pain. A greeting. New voice joining the chorus. 3 days later, Lena sat in a hospital room, sterile and white. The nurse had just removed the bandages from her shoulder. The bite wound wasn't infected. In fact, it had healed unnaturally fast. The doctor said she was lucky, said he'd never seen anything close to that kind of tissue regeneration. She didn't feel lucky. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A small TV in the corner played a local news channel. A cheerful reporter described a recent bear sighting near Black Hollow. Some campers had heard strange noises. Officials were investigating. No mention of claw marks, no mention of missing people, no mention of what had truly happened. Marky leaned against the wall, flipping through a magazine without seeing it. He hadn't spoken much since they got out. He kept the silver knife Aaron left behind, never letting it out of arm's reach. He said it made him feel safe. Lena wasn't. Sure, anything could. A nurse knocked gently and stepped in with a clipboard. "You're cleared to go. Discharge papers are ready." Lena nodded, stood slowly, pain still buzzing in her bones like static. As she changed clothes, she caught her reflection in the mirror. For a split second, her eyes weren't brown. They were black. She blinked, and they were normal again. She didn't tell Mark. They drove out of the hospital parking lot and didn't speak for an hour. Only when the highway signs pointed west did Mark finally say, "Where now?" "I don't know," she said. "Somewhere far." He nodded, then added quietly, "There's something wrong with me." She didn't reply, because there was something wrong with her too. That night she woke in a motel room outside town, drenched in sweat, gasping. Her fingers ached. Her teeth had bled, and when she looked in the mirror again, this time her reflection smiled back, but she wasn't smiling. That night, Lena dreamed she was back in the cave, but it wasn't crumbling anymore. It was alive. Walls pulsed like muscle. The stone was warm, breathing. Blood seeped through the cracks in rhythmic pulses. The torches weren't flames. They were eyes, staring down at her, judging. In the center stood the Hollow King. But this time, he wasn't moving. He was being torn open from the inside. The black mass, the ancient thing that had worn him like a shell, crawled out and stood before her. It had no face, no name. It reached for her, and she didn't run. She stepped closer, because in the dream, she understood it. It didn't want to kill her. It wanted to be her. She woke screaming. Mark burst in from the adjoining room holding the silver knife. "What happened?" She was soaked in sweat, her fingernails digging into the mattress. Her shirt was torn down the back. She shook her head. Dream, that's all. But she was lying, because she wasn't scared. She was changing. Elsewhere, in a quiet town less than 50 miles from the forest, a family of 5 vanished from a campground. No signs of struggle, only their empty tent and claw marks on the trees. The ranger blamed bears. The locals muttered about the blood moon. But one teenage boy in the neighboring campsite swore he heard howling, not like wolves, like people. Crying, then laughing. The case was closed by morning. But something moved in the woods that night. Not an animal, not human. Something new. And somewhere in a cheap motel room, Lena stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. This time, her teeth looked sharper. She didn't blink. Neither did the reflection. Lena didn't tell Mark about the dreams. She didn't tell him about the flashes of memories that weren't hers, racing through trees, the taste of blood, the feeling of claws splitting flesh. She didn't tell him that sometimes, when she blinked, She saw through the trees. She heard other things now, too. Whispers on the wind that didn't belong to the world they'd left. Instead, she sat at a diner with him the next morning, drinking bitter coffee and watching him read the newspaper. His hands trembled. His eyes were red. "They're covering it up," he muttered. She glanced over. The headline read, "3 more campers missing. Rangers blame wildlife." Below it, a blurry trail cam photo showed glowing eyes in the night. Not a bear, not a wolf, something wrong. Mark tapped it. This is what it's doing. Spreading. Quiet. Controlled. It doesn't want attention. Not yet. Lena sipped her coffee. "You think it's planning something?" Mark looked at her. Really looked. "You haven't had dreams, have you?" A pause. She smiled too quickly. No. He didn't believe her, but he didn't press. They drove west again, town after town, watching the reports grow. Small disappearances, vague attacks, unconfirmed sightings, and always the same signature. No bodies, no blood trail, just claw marks, and silence. The old blood moon had passed, but something had stayed awake. That night, Mark finally asked the question they'd both been avoiding. What if we didn't stop it? What if it was never supposed to be stopped? Lena didn't answer right away. She was staring at the full moon outside the motel window. Her voice was quiet. "I don't think we stopped it, Mark." She turned toward him. "I think we birthed it." He backed away slowly. She stood up, stretching her neck until it cracked. "I think we're not running from it anymore." Her smile returned, but it wasn't hers. "I think we're running to it." Mark didn't sleep that night, not after Lena's smile, not after the way her eyes had gleamed in the moonlight, just for a second, just long enough for him to wonder if Lena was still Lena at all. She hadn't attacked him, hadn't shifted, hadn't howled, but something in her had tilted, like a painting slightly askew. Not enough for someone else to notice. But Mark had known her too long. He saw the cracks. She dreamed now, every night. And whatever she saw in those dreams made her stronger. He watched her while she slept, peaceful, almost serene, until she whispered in her sleep, "He's coming." He didn't ask who, because he already knew. The next morning, Mark went out early, told her he was getting breakfast. He lied. Instead, he drove into town and found a pawn shop. Asked the owner if they had any silver. The old man didn't ask questions, just handed him a small case. Inside, 3 bullets, handcrafted. Expensive. "Only the real thing," the man said, watching Mark closely. "You planning on putting something down?" Mark nodded once. Something like that. He pocketed the bullets, heart racing. When he got back to the motel, Lena was standing outside watching the trees. She turned to him slowly, smiling. "You were gone a while." Coffee line was long. She didn't say anything, but her eyes drifted to his coat pocket, where the bullets were, and for the first time in days, she looked afraid, just for a second. Then it passed. She stepped closer. "Mark, whatever you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything." "You are." Her voice had changed, just slightly. Lower, more like him. Mark's fingers twitched at his side, and then she leaned in, whispered against his ear. "You won't need silver. You're changing too." He froze, and she walked inside, calm and steady, like she already knew how this would end. Mark didn't sleep. Again. He sat on the edge of the motel bed all night, staring at the door between their rooms, watching the shadows under the crack, listening for any change in breathing, any sudden footsteps. But Lena didn't make a sound, not until just before dawn. He heard scratching, not nails on wood, claws, not frantic, rhythmic, steady. He rose and pressed his ear to the door. The sound stopped. "Lena," he whispered. No answer. He opened the door slowly. She was standing in front of the mirror, back to him. Still. Her reflection wasn't still, though. It twitched, smiled. He looked closer. The reflection wasn't hers. It was the version of her, from the cave. The not Jess. The black-eyed thing that had smiled through blood. She turned suddenly. Her real face was normal. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked softly. Mark shook his head. "No." She walked past him, sat on the edge of the bed. "Me neither. Something's wrong with the air. It feels heavy." Mark didn't speak. His hand moved slowly toward his coat pocket, toward the bullets. She looked up at him, and her eyes were black again. Not glowing, not wolf-like, just voids. Empty. Mark's breath caught in his throat, then they flickered, like a candle in wind, and returned to brown. She smiled. "What if it's not a curse?" He backed away. She stood. "What if it's a gift?" she said, voice softer now. "He showed me things. How we were before we walked upright, before we made fire, when the night belonged to us." "Lena," Mark whispered, "this isn't you." "It is," she said. "You're just seeing it for the first time." She stepped forward, slowly. Mark drew the gun. She froze. So did he. "You're not going to shoot me," she said. He didn't reply, and part of him wondered if she was right, because something in him had started to itch, to shift, to want. A hunger with no name. He hadn't slept in days. He hadn't seen his reflection in just as long, and when he touched the scar on his arm, he swore. He felt it twitch. Mark didn't lower the gun, but his grip weakened. Lena watched him with a strange tenderness, like she was waiting for him to understand something he hadn't yet let himself believe. "You feel it, don't you?" she said. "The pull, the hollow under your skin." No. But his voice cracked. Lena stepped forward. "You haven't slept, you haven't eaten, but you're still standing, stronger than you should be." Mark's hand trembled. Jess was the first to turn," Lena said gently, "but not the last." Her smile didn't falter. "Aaron knew it. He saw it in you before you did. That's why he stayed behind. That's why he didn't want you to see what came next." Mark looked down at his shaking fingers. The gun felt heavier. His skin itched. His vision blurred at the edges. Every noise, the hum of the motel fridge, the ticking of the clock was too loud. And underneath it all, he heard breathing. Not Lena's, his own, but deeper, more animal. He backed away. "No, I'm still me." "You are," Lena whispered, "but not for long." She turned toward the window. The sun was just starting to rise, pale and cold behind layers of gray clouds. "It's not the blood moon anymore," she said, "but that doesn't matter now. Not after what we let out." Mark's eyes narrowed. "The creature, the thing that came out of the king, it's still alive, isn't it?" Lena nodded. "It doesn't die, it spreads." Mark raised the gun again. "And if I stop you now?" She turned back, not angry, just sad. "You won't." He didn't. Couldn't. And when she finally stepped past him, opened the door, and walked. Outside, he followed. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because something inside him had begun to howl. They drove without speaking. Lena in the passenger seat, eyes closed, face turned toward the wind. Mark at the wheel, hands stiff on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Every town they passed looked normal. Coffee shops, gas stations, school buses humming along morning routes. But Mark could feel it now. The tension in the air. A heaviness behind the sky. The world looked the same. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Something had changed, and no one knew it but them. And maybe not even them anymore. After a few hours, Lena finally spoke. There's a place near the border, deep forest. Off-grid, no roads. My uncle used to trap there. It's quiet, forgotten. Mark didn't ask why she wanted to go there. He already knew. She wasn't looking for refuge. She was looking for ground, so it could spread again. So the new hollow could grow. He could feel it inside himself. That gnawing desire. Not a voice. Not words. Just pressure, like a tide waiting for a full moon. You think there are more? He asked after a long silence. Not yet, she said. But there will be. How do you know? Lena opened her eyes. They're dreaming too, even if they don't remember. Mark's throat went dry. Who? All of them. They stopped for gas in a town so small it didn't even have a name on the map. And while Lena paid, Mark went into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at himself in the mirror. His reflection was breathing slightly out of sync with him. He wiped fog from the glass, and the reflection didn't move. It just stared. Its mouth curled into a smile and whispered without sound. You're ready. He punched the mirror. Glass shattered. Blood poured from his knuckles, but he felt nothing. Outside, the wind howled, but it wasn't wind. Not anymore. They left the small town behind as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the two-lane highway. Mark drove in silence, his bandaged knuckles tight against the wheel. He hadn't told Lena about the mirror. She hadn't asked. The trees grew denser as they neared the edge of the known world. Road signs became scarce. Streetlights vanished. Eventually, the pavement turned to gravel, then to dirt. The forest swallowed the car whole. Lena looked out the window. This is where it begins. Mark didn't respond. The road ended at a rusted gate, overgrown with vines. A broken sign lay half buried in the soil, the only word still legible. Boundary, they drove past it. The trees here were older, taller, the kind that remembered things, the kind that leaned just a little too close as if listening. By nightfall, they reached the clearing, no cabin, no fire pit, just open space surrounded by thick forest. Mark stepped out listening. Nothing, but his ears rang with expectation. Lena stood in the center of the clearing. The moon, not blood red now, just full and heavy, shone down on her like a spotlight. They're coming, she said. Mark turned. Who? All of them. She took a deep breath. The ones who dream. The ones who saw it and didn't run. Some still fight it. Some think it's a sickness. But they're wrong. It's evolution. She looked at Mark, her eyes black again, but soft. You've been feeling it, haven't you? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because in the quiet, something moved. Figures emerged from the trees. Dozens, men and women, all silent, all calm. Some walked on two legs, others hunched forward. Some shifted slightly in the moonlight, their skin flickering like flame. Mark looked around in horror. They weren't attacking. They were gathering, and Lena smiled. This is the new pack. From the trees came a howl, but it wasn't a creature. It was everyone. Howling in unison, a call, a ritual. Mark opened his mouth and found himself howling too. Mark felt the howl rip through him, not from his throat, but from something deeper, a place in his bones he hadn't known existed. It wasn't painful. It wasn't even terrifying anymore. It was release. The others answered in perfect unison, their voices weaving through the trees like smoke, a chorus of the forgotten, the reborn, the changed. The clearing pulsed with energy. The moon seemed larger than it should be, casting silver light like a beacon. Lena stepped forward, eyes glowing like twin obsidian mirrors. "You feel it now," she said softly. "Don't you?" Mark stood in the center of the circle. Dozens surrounded him. Faces he didn't know. Faces he might have passed on the street days ago. People from everywhere, drawn here by dreams, by whispers, by the thing beneath the king. He wanted to say no, wanted to fight, but there was nothing left to fight with. He'd carried silver. He'd carried guilt. He'd carried grief. And now, he dropped the bullets to the forest floor. They didn't make a sound when they landed. Lena stepped closer. "You understand now. We weren't cursed. We were invited." He closed his eyes and remembered Aaron's last words. "Tell them the stories were merciful lies." Mark opened his eyes again, looked up at the moon, and nodded once. "I'm ready." Lena leaned in and whispered, "Then it's time." She placed her hands on either side of his head, not to hurt, to crown him. From the forest they came, on all fours, on two legs in shadow and smoke. The new pack, a kingdom of silence, of teeth, of forgotten gods walking in borrowed skin. And at the center of them all, Mark stood still as they knelt around him. The hollow king was gone, but a new one had risen. And this time, there would be no seals, no bells, no cages, only the dark, and the sound of howling that never ended.